Now we will proceed to the question and answer session. So there are some questions already here for our speakers. I will start with Sir Galvin. So there is some question for you, sir, now. The first one is, when should we use synchronous and asynchronous? And then if they already do it, is it good practice to ask students to work independently with asynchronous contents, but make them those during class hour? So like they do those things independently, and in the second hour they join the teacher for video conference, so like mixing the asynchronous and synchronous learning. So could you give your insights or
Sure.
experience?
So I think that maybe to address the question, I just want to bring up, because it always helps us when we do decisions like this to think about the criteria. Usually, as I think I did show it in one of the slides, but I know that I had a lot of slides, so sorry about that. But I remember showing the criteria that we often use. And there are really three things that we think about to decide on these things. The first is access. So in the context of your school, what does access look like? For example, I have a friend who is an assistant principal in the United States right now in Maryland. Access is not an issue for them. So in fact, because access is not an issue for them, for their students, they do a lot more synchronous. And in fact, that's one of the models that they do. That, for example, they have a class period, for example, 9 a.m. to 12 noon. The teacher does a synchronous session at 9 a.m. They do some asynchronous sessions, activities in between, and then they end with another synchronous session. So um, there's actually an emerging form right now called semi-synchronous learning. I saw some articles lately about it, wherein some teachers are saying that using the synchronous to frame the asynchronous activities helps students, most especially those who have low level of autonomy. Um, so that's the second consideration, learner autonomy. No? So if you look at your learners and you feel like you cannot assume as a high level of independent learning among your learners, and you will know this better, then inserting more synchronous actually helps, because framing when, where, when they will actually do the asynchronous activities will actually sort of mimic the going into the classroom that happens in a face-to-face scenario, right? So that's the second criteria, autonomy. So if you feel that your learners are less autonomous based on your understanding or knowledge of them, then definitely inserting more synchronous as long as they have access will help, because the teacher is more present in those situations. The teacher will be around while the student is doing the work, and the teacher will help actually direct the pace of students if you feel that that direction is necessary. The third and I think important criteria is the task that you want them to do. So for example, I think a lot of our other speakers today gave very clear examples of this, that if the task involves, let's say, absorbing new information, what we know from learning sciences and research on learning is that it takes time to do that. So for example, what we're doing right now is not necessarily the best way if I want you to be experts eventually in the content that I'm telling you about, right? In fact, if cognitive activity is the expectation is high level of cognitive activity, then maybe those are activities that belong more in asynchronous learning. No? So I think thinking about things in those three criteria has been helpful for us. Maybe for those of you wondering whether you should do synchronous or asynchronous, you could think of those three things: no? Access, autonomy, and the nature of the task. And depending on your answers to those three criteria, I think that will lead you to the decision whether to do it more synchronously or asynchronously. But I do understand the situation presented, that synchronous sessions can actually be management tools also for us teachers. But again, you always defer to the kind of learners that you have. Like I'm not so sure if that model will work for, let's say, my graduate students right now because they're all working, and for them, they appreciate more time on their hands, more asynchronous, so that they will be able to do it in their allocated time and not necessarily in a class schedule. if you're talking about, let's say, undergrad students, and most of them or all of them are full-time students, maybe asking them to do things within a class schedule might be appropriate or might be helpful. So I think these decisions should always be taken in a particular context and not in absolutes, I think. No? So I was able to clarify the answer.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Yeah, sometimes we really like have to make sure when it is good for synchronous and asynchronous, and think deeper how we perform it and design it for the students. Thank you for your explanation.
Thank
And
you.
there is another question here for you. How would you suggest to organize a class with different standard of students level? So we have to facilitate differentiated teaching and learning process and product.
Yeah.
This is because students with low technology literacy from other islands that cause them to have less motivation in doing distance learning. Thank you.
Sure. Can I, maybe just to, okay, I won't share my slide anymore in the interest of time. But if you remember the triangle that I showed a while ago, I think that's where this becomes relevant. And I think this might be a discussion that will be better school-wide or department-wide rather than classroom-wide. And I say that because the reality is in online learning, as you shift from one modality to another, it takes a lot of time, right? I'm sure that that's the elephant in the room. That before I was able to create like an 8-hour module, or before Miss Martha was able to create her course that students engaged in, it took a lot of time to look for all of these tools, to select what will be appropriate, to think of these activities. So I think that as a department, as a school, maybe it's important that you decide on your base layer. So, for example, if you remember in my sharing, I started with Ateneo's decision for the base layer to be online learning modality, which means that that's where we will start. We will start to design online, and then we will make provisions for, let's say, printed modules or offline modules for some students. And that's really coming from research, from a survey that we made to find out what access looks like for our students. Now, if, for example, if students in your particular department or in your particular school, if what you find out is different, for example, what you find out is the assumption is that most students actually do not have access, while you have some students who will be okay with a fully online scenario, then that means that your base layer might be different, that your base layer might be that low bandwidth layer. And then for students who have access, you can create provisions for them to add on to their learning experience. So I think it's important to think of it with the data. So if, let's say, in your class, most of them do not have access, then my suggestion is plan for that lower layer and then just make provisions for the other layers or the upper layers, meaning more technology tools, more online. But if it's the other way around, still plan, I think, for the online, but make small provisions for those. So, for example, I think Miss Martha mentioned this a while ago, making sure that students are able to download, for example, download the materials, so that if they're offline, they can still look at the materials. So things like that help. Um, and then one thing that we're realizing that also helps is that if you have things like that, you have to explicitly tell students that those are available. Because I don't know about you, but I've encountered a lot of students who will ask questions before thinking, right? Before actually doing things on their own and exploring, they'll just ask the question, even if it's already there in their faces, so to speak, right? So some much like us that we're also navigating this new space, our students are also getting used to it, this new learning environment. So if we make these provisions, I think it's important that we announce it to students. So for example, to really explicitly tell them, for example, in your course, that if you are offline, you can actually download the materials and view it offline. So even if it sounds very obvious to us, sometimes the tendency is they don't think about it, mainly because maybe they haven't done it before. But hopefully, as we go into more online learning, they'll get used to it a little more. They will have more set routines. But at the onset, I think the transparency between teachers and students is important.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank
And
you.
I think what you did in Ateneo with Father Johnny to train all the teachers is really something to prepare the online learning, right?
Yes. So yeah, it took a lot of effort, to be honest. We've been training teachers for for around 3 months now.
Wow.
We have around 1,000 teachers who were training from different Ateneo schools and Jesuit schools. Like we run webinars every week like this to add on to their knowledge and experience, and for the community to also come together to exchange ideas and ask questions. So yeah, it is a lot of effort. But one thing that we also that also inspires us or continues to inspire us in our work is community. That I think it's the community that will really make it happen. That teachers working together, teachers being open to sharing resources with each other. So for example, if you're an administrator here, that's one of the things that you may want to really consider. How can you create that community of helping each other? Because we'll never have the answers to everything. We'll never be 100% prepared. So
Yeah.
you need a group of people who you can turn to and say, that's okay. Maybe I can help you. Let's help each other.
Yes. Thank you very much for your answer and also uh, the experience you shared to us in Ateneo. So I will move now to Professor Iwan. There is a question for you, sir. To what extent the tolerance of ambiguity and certainty can be accepted in today's crisis? And then in science and mathematics learning, even in face-to-face meetings, the misconceptions can happen. How could we anticipate or overcome it in online learning?
Thank you. Yes, that's a difficult question to answer. What I perhaps I will give you a context of that. You remember at the beginning of the pandemic, some religious people saying that don't worry, God will protect me. You know that that's the absolutism. The
Yes.
absolutism. On the other hand, we see that even religious institution like Mecca, for example, in Saudi Arabia, stop the pilgrimage and then uh, spraying disinfectant into the holy area. So the question is, uh, God God does not protect them. So right, that's important to see the life issue not black and white like that. Some are ambiguous. Okay, some we cannot rely on absolutism. Even in mathematics, in science, I think we stress, we misperceive that mathematics is absolute. It's not actually. There are many aspect on that. Okay, and it's not as absolute as lay people see that 2 + 2 is 4, always 4. It's not always like that. I think it is important now. We can see that we have to have plural thinking. This is important, but perhaps we need another opportunity to discuss that. But I think yes, I agree, totally agree with that. That even in mathematics, so in mathematics science, I think previously we stress too much on formula, for example. Then we didn't have time to argue, to criticize the formula. We did not have time to for being skeptics into the formula. So I think it's a good time now. We can see life more more in context now. See that, and we can see that the absolutism really not the right way to go now. And yeah, I guess that's my answer.
Thank you very much, sir, for your explanation. Yeah, I know how it's difficult in science and math because I'm also teaching there. We
I
really
think,
have a lot of
yeah, I
struggles there.
think in social science and humanity, I think there are no difficulty. I think with that because the the nature of the nature of the discipline already plural. But in science and math, I think it's it's not that easy. But it is. We have to nurture the plural thinking as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you very much, sir, for your explanation and emphasize in
Oh yeah,
the
there is
plural
one
aspect.
Miss Alfiani asking about the.
Mhm.
There is a private question
Oh
about
yeah,
the teaching liberal arts. Yes, this is a good question. In my opinion, uh, the in particular in liberal arts rhetoric. I think the word rhetoric now in modern life becoming so negative, right? For
yeah,
people, but I think it is important. We can see that now how to argue, how to convince people. That's becoming important, even for the government now, how to convince people to wear masks, to wash their hands. It becoming important tool now in this pandemic. So I think I agree that liberal arts must be done. Don't forget about liberal arts. It is important. Thank you, Miss Debbie.
thank you, sir. Now I will proceed to Mrs. Marta. There are two questions for you, Bu Marta. The first one is uh, there is a lecturer here asking you, many students of mine and subjects of my study experience unstable state of emotions due to the pandemic for various reasons. In your experience, how does humanistic approach cater or facilitate students' emotional well-being?
Oh, okay. Okay. Actually, the most important characteristic in a humanistic approach is that situation must be non-threatening. So you know that tools are just tools, instrumental. So when the tools are difficult to learn, how can students learn? So actually, I choose tools that students are already familiar. So for example, like the main platform, I use Schoology because all students are familiar with that even before the pandemic. And also I use Facebook because everybody has Facebook account already. And the students seem to be very happy. When I know that we are going to use Facebook, I'm very happy. So they feel secure. Oh, this is not something difficult. And I think that is very important. So you have to use tools that students are familiar, that is not threatening. And you know that the situation during the pandemic is already stressful in itself. Yeah. So we should not add the students' stress with our classes that are not friendly. So that is why I emphasize in the first few minutes to say like hi and then greet one another. And actually, when I develop a WhatsApp group, many students sometimes do not ask questions in the group, but they ask to me privately. I often remind them, please use the group so that I will not repeat the same answer. And but still, they contact me privately. But I think this is, I could say that this is emergency situation. So sometimes I also accommodate that kind of thing. And then it's also very important that we are not judgmental because we do not know the situations of the students. They may have internet problem or they may have financial problems, so they cannot buy uh, internet data, or they might, some of them live in villages because when I do WhatsApp a video call, with her, I saw trees and then it's like a forest. And then I asked, where are you? Oh, this is my house. It's in a very small village and the internet connection is sometimes not very good. Okay, so I use something that is non-threatening, and then I also have to have like a non-judgmental attitude to my students. We always have to think positively towards our students. When students do not submit assignment, do not just judge that, oh, you are lazy, because we do not know the problems. Yeah? And when I accommodate also students chatting me privately through my WhatsApp, then they open their problems to me. Oh, this is my situation. Would you like to give me a second chance to submit? Because at that time I have very low connection and I did not manage submitting this long video and something like that. So it's very important that we choose instrument that is familiar, that is not because the tools is just tools, it's not the main thing. And then the most important that learning happens.
Thank you, Bu, for your explanation. There is the last question for this Q&A sessions for Bu Marta. So there is someone asking about your Facebook benefit for the new generation learners in Indonesia that you shared a while ago. She asked about, would similar ripple effective if we use this with international class students where they maybe have privacy issues?
Okay, so as I said that I create a Facebook closed, so only members of my class and me as the administrator can see the activities on Facebook. So it's very different when I make it open. Yeah. And many of my students say, oh, I'm not confident enough to post this this chat or this work, yeah, on a open Facebook. So I use a closed Facebook, and I think another social media like Instagram does not have that kind of feature. So that's why I use Facebook, although actually most of my students actually prefer Instagram. They say, oh, all of my Facebook friends now are not active. And I need to also log in again because I have lost my account and things like that. But the feature that it has closed group, I think it is to secure that they have privacy. So they are not afraid that they will feel embarrassed or things like that.
Okay. Thank you, Bu, for your answer. All participants, I'm so sorry because of the limitation of the time. We cannot answer all of the questions you posted in the chat room, but I hope what the speakers explained a while ago, it will give you more insights and can answer your questions.